Okay, so it's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I decided I wanted to talk about what is multimedia journalism. It's a question that I've often asked. On my business card, it says I am a multimedia journalist. I also teach students both here and in other places multimedia journalism. However, it's not as simple a question as you might think, and I'd like to try to explore it over the next 10 minutes or so. So at the moment, multimedia journalism is delivered on new digital platforms. We call them digital pages or digital platforms. And at this point in time, this is something that is changing rapidly. We have three major platforms: mobile phones, tablets, iPad and Android, and computers, mainly through the internet. Now, digital pages are fundamentally different from traditional platforms: radio, television, and print, newspapers and magazines. And to start this question, one of the things that I think I need to do is to try to explore how these platforms are different, and that should hopefully lead us to a definition, or closer to a definition, of a multimedia journalist. If you go into a newsroom today, particularly a newspaper newsroom, you can ask people what is multimedia journalism, and you will probably get a very different answer from the writers as you do from the photographers. The photographers will tell you that multimedia journalism is video, effectively. They'll call it multimedia, but they're talking about something that could be delivered on a television, a video content. And there are people in America who make a lot of money by training photographers in basic video journalism, the same course that they could probably get at their local community college in how to create a simple news video. If you ask the writers, they'll probably talk about mobile phones, about running around sending tweets, sending GPS locations of where they are, possibly doing short video snatches and taking photographs with their phone and sending them back to the office. They see it as something very different from photographers. And if you went into a television newsroom and you went into a radio newsroom, you would there also find different definitions. So let me firstly attempt to discuss how there are different. And I'm taking here now from Clay Shirky, who points out three fundamental differences in the way that a digital page is from traditional platforms. The first is that we have this many-to-many scenario, and this is really difficult to explain. In a traditional media environment, television, radio, newspapers, magazines, you have a single organization, normally by a single proprietor, who has invested a large amount of money in all of the devices and machinery that they need and delivery platforms they need to get their message to a wide audience. But it goes from one to many. When we move on to a digital platform, we suddenly find ourselves in the middle of the internet, where there are possibly thousands, maybe even millions of other news sources. It also calls into question the whole concept of having news that is impartial, that tries to tell the story without taking sides. That concept comes from a tradition in newspapers in particular, also in television, where you only have one TV station in your town or one newspaper. So commercially and also ethically, it's good to try to keep yourself as balanced as possible, that you give the wide range of the community both sides of the story. But when you exist in this particular space, you are next to many, many other people all together, and having a neutral position, as Jay Rossen calls the story from nowhere, the view from nowhere, is harder commercially to sustain, as the American networks are finding at the moment. And it also is not as necessary as it had been. And that calls into question some fundamentals, principles of when journalism is. Let me continue. The second thing that Clay Shirky points out is that the devices that we consume this media on, computers, tablets, mobile phones, all have the ability to create media. So effectively, your audience also becomes producers. Every time you add another person to your audience, you add an additional producer. And here we see, this is the CNN, but you could find pretty well any Western news application now. You see in the same place where people are consuming news, where they go for their headlines, they look at their local news, they look at video, they also have the iReport, which comes up here. They also have the ability to send news. And that, again, fundamentally changes the dynamics of journalism. And finally, and this really is the main point that relates to multimedia journalism, is that on a digital page, all types of media can exist for the first time in the same place. We have text, photography, audio, video, graphics, and social. That is the ability for a whole set of audiences to communicate amongst themselves and discuss the subject and communicate back with the journalist that created it. It exists for the first time, and this is where multimedia journalism, I would contest, is really based. So a multimedia journalist should have the ability to deliver all of these media types, not necessarily all at the same time. And let me give you an example of that. So if you go into a newsroom and you ask them, OK, I want you to be a photographer, a writer, a audio journalist, a video journalist. I want you to understand After Effects and motion graphics, all these things. They will probably look at you bemused. Yet, at the same time, those very same people are probably doing this in their social life without thinking about it. When they get onto Facebook, for example, I'm going to give you an example of them going to a party. Someone is going to a party, and they're going to meet some graduates, some people that they studied with some years ago and they haven't seen for a long time. So the first thing that they would probably do is communicate that with text, because text is, at that point, the best means of communicating the fact they're going to a party. They will put up update their Facebook status or send out a Twitter feed and say, I'm going to a party, I'm going to meet all my old friends, and communicate in that way to their social network. When they arrive at the party, they see some old friends they haven't seen for a long time, and they want to tell their other friends they've seen them. What do? They probably take a picture. Why? Because in this particular space, on a digital page in Facebook, a photograph is the best way to tell people, look, I'm here with this old friend, look what they look like now. They could try it in text, but the best way to communicate that is with photography. Later, maybe the party gets wild, and they decide, OK, I want to take a picture of my friend doing this stupid dance. But they won't take a picture. They'll probably take a video, because video is the best way to demonstrate that dance. And they will upload that to their Facebook page. So what they are doing, they are effectively acting as multimedia journalism, in that they are choosing the most appropriate means to tell the story, given the fact they are on a digital page, and all of these particular types of media are available to them, and they choose the one that they want to do. OK, so I'm going to move on and give a quick example from myself and my work as a multimedia journalist. Most of this is done with a simple camera. It's not expensive and extravagant equipment. So this is how a story I'm going to use as an example, a story from Ethiopia on the East African famine that happened last year, how it appeared in the newspaper with a single picture and with text. That is the only way I had in the newspaper, in the traditional medium, of telling that story. I had no other choice. But when I move on to a digital page, what I find is I have more options. Now, firstly, the thing that the newspaper does, and this is where many traditional media organizations get it wrong, is they use what they call shovel technology. They shovel what is on their traditional media, video or audio if they're a radio station, or if they're a newspaper, just take their pictures and their text, and they put it onto the digital platform, thinking that's how people can now access our information. But actually, it doesn't work nearly as well as that. So what I have here is how it appears on the mobile platform. And on the mobile platform, I have an opportunity to, in this very short space of short real estate placed in which to put the story, to choose to put video instead. And here I would argue, and I'm going to show you just a few seconds of that video, that in this particular instance, given the space of the mobile phone real estate, that this is the best way to tell that story. Nobody really wants to read 1,000 words on a mobile phone and look at one picture when they could just hold the phone up and see the video. I'm just going to play just a few seconds to give you an understanding of what that can look like.
At 6 in the morning, Shahatu Abdu Ali leaves her home in Fez, Ethiopia, to walk 12 kilometers to the local market. Her mission is simple: to sell enough firewood packed on the back of the family donkey to pay for a meal to feed her family of 7 before the end of the day. Waiting back in the village with their 5 children, Ali 12, Kima 8, Halwa 14, Theo 9, and Mohammed 4, her husband Gabriel explains the family predicament.
Okay, I'm going to come out of that. But what I'm doing there effectively is reading the story. And I'm visualizing it. I'm showing the visuals as it happens in a video mode. And this is how it appears again on the website. But I would argue that that, as a multimedia journalist, is a decision that I made at the time. I'm still bound by the fact that the organization I work for has a traditional platform that they need content for. But as a multimedia journalist, I have the ability, I have the skills to be able to deliver in other formats as well, and in this case, video. And it doesn't go beyond that. It can become much more exciting when we move primarily only onto the digital platform. When we just go onto a digital platform and we get rid of the traditional, the traditional way of telling stories, is that we have an opportunity here to start laying out our stories in multimedia formats. So that means we can have text still here. We can put the text that we think is best delivered by text. We can have photography, we can have video, infographics, and a discussion of social media that all takes place in the same place. And that is really where we're moving to and where it gets most exciting, that we can lay out our story in a completely radically new way that incorporates the best media for, or the most appropriate media for the particular story, and that can all relate to each other in different ways. And we're starting to see that now, particularly with newspapers who, rather than having a photograph on their iPad application, they would have a short video. The short video would not be packaged, it wouldn't necessarily have a voiceover, but it would tell the part of the story that is missing from the text that goes along with it. So that leads me to the sort of conclusion: what is multimedia journalism? And I would argue, as a result of what I've just shown you, that a multimedia journalist is somebody who, one, understands that a digital platform has an ability to use all types of media, has the skills to deliver that, and then when they are on an assignment, they bring with them all of that traditional journalism practice, journalism ethics, journalism understanding of media law, etc. And with that, they go about trying to create a story with the ability, the skills of photography, video, audio, writing, social media, and infographics, that they choose the most appropriate way to tell that story on a digital page and deliver it in that fashion.